Hi, Tanya. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. We have Tanya here. She's an expert on personal training. She has had a lot of, different areas of expertise in food psychology as well, and even a story of your own with, weight loss, if I am not mistaken. So, do you want to tell us a bit about you and what do you do, and then we start right to the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for having me on. I, in a nutshell, teach people how to really become mentally, physically, and emotionally strong and healthy so that they can look, feel, and show up in their day-to-day life as their best self. And exercise is such a huge component of that. We all have our own stories and our hero's journey, and a lot of it stem from my own addiction and coming from a family of substance abusers. And exercise is a tool. It's another form of substance to help handle intense negative emotions so that you can move through them and deal with them in a healthy way, and you're able to function at your best. So that's kind of like that in a nutshell, but I have the whole long spieled out story over on my website. So if you are interested in hearing the whole story, you can head over there at www.tanyasilva.com.
Thank you. And you mentioned that, sometimes we don't think of exercise as a tool, and I feel that most often it's thought about negative. There's a negative connotation about exercise. And so I think it's very interesting that you say it's a tool we can use. It's a tool we can use. So what do you feel that exercise brings, to a healthy lifestyle? And maybe not only in the obvious that we all know, like you are getting fit, and like what else does it bring to us that can help us in other areas?
Absolutely. So there's 2 points that you touched on, and I want to address both. One, you mentioned people don't look at it as a tool. They look at it as a form of punishment, especially if you've been on this journey for quite some time, because I've gone through all segments and I understand, and working with people for over 15 years, it's the common thing. And the second point that we're going to also, that you had mentioned is, how is it more beneficial besides just the physical realm? So to answer the first one, it is a form of punishment if you're engaging in exercises that are not in alignment with your body's natural movement patterns. We all have different ways of how our body enjoys to move, and when we start to attach exercise as a form of, we have to do this in order to be at this certain weight, or for our body to change in, the way that we want to manipulate and control her or him, then it does become a form of a chore or a form of a punishment. But when you look at it in the sense of exercise is my way to reset myself and to reconnect with me, and to use it as a form of recess. When I work with my students, I'm like, okay, we're going to have a recess break, and let's identify back into the segments where, what was the exercise you used to enjoy as a child? Did you play any sports? Did you like doing anything? Do you put on music at all and just dance around the house? Like, I know it sounds so like cliche, but when you start to move around, like if I'm working for a long period of time and I'm working on the computer, my body's getting angry, and I want to go eat something and shove something in my mouth to numb myself, to give myself relief, I'm like, wait a second, my vagus nerve, which connects hunger and thirst, is going crazy right now because I'm feeling intense overwhelm, and I'm feeling really, like I need a moment to like decompress. I'll just start on the floor doing some core work, and then getting more oxygen into my body and re-energizing myself. And I'll just be like, okay, I didn't want food. My vagus nerve triggered my hunger and thirst, my hormone hungers. And therefore, like, wait a second, I need oxygen. I need movement. I need a time out. I need a time to reset and to reconnect. And when you look at it in that sense of, wait, let me pull my tool, which is exercise, it just becomes a very powerful tool, and you feel still in control and connected, and you have so many mental breakthroughs for creativity or whatever you need to handle your tasks. And then the second segment that you had mentioned about how's the benefit, it goes back to what I said for the first one. When you identify your body's natural movement patterns, whether it being dance or, definitely strength training is always a foundational segment, because it allows you to be able to perform the things that you want to do, whether it being hiking or, taking long travel trips and biking with your family, or for me, it's salsa dancing and hot yoga. Like, I use my strength training to be a better athlete for all those other things, because when you're doing more sport specific things, of your, fun stuff, your body, they do require imbalances of the body. So when you're doing your strength training, it's a time to really make sure that you're strong and you're not going to hurt yourself when you go and do like 100 spins on the dance floor. For me, for example, flare your leg out, it's a time to like balance out the imbalances for the things that you want to go ahead and enjoy for your life, your recess, your time. But most importantly, it's for your mind. When you take care of your physical space, you're able to become mentally and emotionally stable and healthy and sharp. A lot of people are looking at, right now we're at an epidemic of mental health, and it's because we're constantly disconnecting through self-medication, whether it being food or popping pills or, not moving our body, or, whatever substance of choice, whatever those other tools that aren't serving you in the long run. And so it's more first and foremost for your mental health, for you to really feel like you have it all together. And no matter what life chaotic event is thrown at you, you're able to just feel still in control and know that you're okay and everything will get handled and life will still move on, and you have that sense of empowerment. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that you can share with somebody and coach somebody through, is how they can tap into that space on their own versus feeling like they have to be codependent on someone or something else.
Yeah, and I think that you said something that's really interesting, right? It is a tool the same way that some people might feel anxiety and they go to the kitchen and eat something because it feels good to do that. Exercise can do the same thing for you, and you don't need to put food in your mouth. Maybe you don't need at that time. You just need that break, right?
So go ahead. I want to share something real fast. So I was taking the trip over here. We were driving for 4 hours. Of course, the 4-hour trip ended up being like 8 hours. So taking stops and stuff like that over to the other side of the coast. And I was explaining to my friend about, substance abuse, because that's one of my passions, is helping people out of substance abuse and into how to take care of themselves through exercise, food, and overall self-care. And it's an equation. And what it is you have a triggered emotion. And this goes back to what you're saying. Why do we reach for something out of control and then just throw it into our mouth to numb ourselves, to self-soothe, to shut ourselves down, shut up. What you're doing is you're saying, shut up, be quiet. What you feel doesn't matter. And you're bad for feeling angry. Shame on you for feeling overwhelmed. Shame on you for wanting to take a break. You're lazy. You're this, just all this self-abuse. And so it's really an equation. So by identifying your trigger emotion, think of it as a math equation. I think I like to look at everything as like a puzzle or an equation. And plus your behavior, which if you're talking specifically about eating, overeating, binge eating, emotional eating, we'll talk that substance for a second, because food is another form of a substance. It's a tool that we use to handle intense triggered emotions, which equals an outcome of instant gratification and really relief. Right? Relief. That keeps us in this stuck self-sabotaging recurring pattern.
Yeah, because you're going to feel better, right? You're going to the tool that that it's going to make you feel better. So
for the moment.
Right. It's a short period of time, but it's your fix. And I feel that, at the beginning, I did no exercise. And I totally empathize with people that they're like, no, I can't do it. I hate going to the gym. I can't do it, right? But for me, it has been a path as well, of learning that maybe it's not that I don't like exercise. I didn't find before what I really liked, right? So how can you use exercise in your benefit, and that it's something that you truly want to do? How do you make that mental mindset change, that instead of being a chore, instead of being a task, it's something that you need, like food, like going to the kitchen and, eating your food, right? So is there something that you could share that helps getting into that change of mindset? How do we break through those this resistance that we have?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And there's two parts to what you're asking. One is identifying movement that you can actually enjoy. And the second is giving yourself permission to take a break. because even though somebody might actually have identified their body's natural movement patterns, they still might feel guilty, ashamed, and feeling undeserving of prioritizing self to be able to take those recess breaks to reset and reconnect. So it's a little bit of, it's a lot of psychology, a lot of giving yourself permission to do so, and then finding placement. Where can I place myself versus last on my list? And also then, you know, finding things to plug in, as I mentioned, to that equation. So, you know, a lot of it is just trial and error. Like, for example, I thought I would love pole dancing. So I would recommend, I love giving homework. So for those of you listening, the audience listening, your audience, I would say pull out a sheet and write down every single exercise that you've been wanting to do that you haven't given yourself permission to do. Maybe something that you might find interesting or fun. Please, please, please have fun. And definitely put in there, whether if you've had a bad experience, unfortunately, in the past with it, or you have no experience with it on the, you know, recently, is strength training. Strength training has to be in there. When you're doing it correctly and you're doing it with, you know, really learning how to do it, it becomes a form of meditation. And it's a complete reconnection with the body you become so self-sufficient with it. And I have a lot of free videos on my YouTube channel. That's just youtube.com/Tanya Silva. But make that list of everything that you've been wanting to do, and then do it. Find a place nearby, try it. And if maybe you like the movement, but you don't like the instructor, it's not the movement, it's just the instructor. So that's like really one way to identify. Everybody's like, oh, I tried it and I thought it was different. I'm like, but did you actually enjoy segments of it? They're like, yeah, like I just didn't like the instructor. I was like, okay, so you didn't like the instructor. There's so many different coaches, and some actually don't know what they're doing and some really do. So don't give up on it, just keep trying, and find somebody that you feel safe with, because it is a space of vulnerability. You know, you're tapping into something that you're not good at in the beginning, and you don't yet trust yourself. So at least find somebody that you can trust, that it's going to guide you through that in a safe space, and you can really be expressive with yourself. And as I was saying, I was like, maybe I want to do pole dancing, and I tried. I found this place everybody was raving about, and I went pole dancing. I was like, oh my God, I hate this. I hate this because it was so much upper body work, and I don't like a lot of upper body work, and you have to like pull. And then I had like rug burn on my thighs. I was like, this is hard. And it's not that I didn't want to do it because it was hard. I just didn't like, I thought it would be different, and it wasn't the instructor. I just didn't like the movement pattern. My body didn't like a lot of upper body stuff. So I was like, okay, I tried it and I crossed it off the list. You know, so if you make the list of things and then try it and try with different instructors and stuff. And then second is, you know, find a time and write it in your agenda book. Like, what time can I become a non-negotiable. And this is a non-negotiable because when I prioritize myself, I can then be able to show up for everything and anything I do in my life as my best self, operating at peak performance, and everyone else will then benefit from me, because in the yoga scripture, they say, if you're going to be selfish, be so selfish that you don't allow anything to disturb your peace of mind. So those are two ways that I can say for that.
Yeah, you mentioned something like strength training has to be in that list, right?
Yes.
Strength training. And I feel that strength training has a bit of a bad reputation somehow.
Oh, yeah.
And like people are into cardio, right? Like cardio is the trendy thing, and it has been for a while, I guess. So tell us a bit about like, why strength training? What is strength training going to do for you that cardio will never do? You know? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of, there's so many benefits. I mean, what you're doing is muscle manipulation in a good way. You're connecting with every single muscle. You have over 700 muscles in your body. And when you're doing your fun cardio and you're having fun, let's say, I want you to have fun with this, like definitely have fun. I salsa dance, I bachata dance, I rollerblade, you know, I do my hot yoga. I do consider that like form cardio strength. It's a combination of both, but there's no way I would be able to perform it if I didn't do strength training, because I have to be strong for a lot of the exercises. And I see so many people in, like, for example, answering your question as a story, do these vinyasa classes, and their shoulders are messed up because they haven't strengthened the shoulder stabilizer muscles to be able to hold up their body. And not only that, which I still am trying to convince my yoga teacher, I'm like, listen, a lot of the yoga is focused on the anterior chain of the body, which is your entire frontal plane, right? Your chest muscles, your core muscles, your legs, but there's a huge neglect in the posterior chain of the body, which is your posture muscles. They're called erector spinae muscles. It keeps you upright. And think about it, in our day-to-day life, whether we have a business online or where we go to work for a company or whatever you're doing, we're always in a forward, rounded out shoulder movement. So a lot of our posterior chain, regardless of just our daily activities, is highly neglected. So when I mentioned earlier in the conversation is strength training, and strength training, I mean, everybody's like, well, what about bodyweight training? I'm like, bodyweight training is hard. Like having, some 3-5 pound dumbbells, a pair of bands, that is strength training as well. So it doesn't have to be in the gym lifting heavy weights. You mentioned it has a bad rep because they're thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger, bodybuilding, no. And if anything, go look up functional strength training. And it's a lot about enhancing mobility, functionality, and just overall performance and rebalancing the imbalance that we're creating with our work life, with our daily activity, with our fun activities. And it's just a time to just kind of reset, rebalance, reconnect, because when you're, for example, if you're doing a chest press with a cable or a band, or if you're doing a band press, you're going to exhale on that press and inhale, bringing it back. So you're connecting to our breath. And when you're connecting to your breath, you're connecting to your energy, and you're also enhancing energy. So instead of grabbing that Snickers bar for that, 2 p.m. midday crash, because we're sitting all day, so we're cutting out circulation. That's why we're tired. We're not getting any blood flow. There's no oxygen getting to the brain, and we're not really breathing anyway. Probably having a little anxiety attacks throughout the day because of our workload or where we think we should be or why we're not there or what's going on. And it just really recharges you. So you're like, wait a second, maybe I don't need food. I need oxygen and movement. And so a strength training really helps you with that.
Yeah. Right. You're moment of peace as well,
Yeah, you become in the present moment. Exactly.
And I feel this is very related, and this is something that I've touched, on other interviews, the concept of the integration of the self, right? Like how your mind, body, spirit, whatever you call it, comes together, right? And I feel like sometimes people don't think that exercise does that, right? So like maybe meditation or yoga, people can totally focus on that and be like, yes, this helps me be centered, but like exercise also helps on that, right? Like on the integration of you as a person, of all aspects.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times people, let's be real. I had a very hard time meditating in the beginning. I was so much energy. I'm like, I can't sit still. I'm like, this is stupid. This is like, what's the point? My mind is going crazy. And when you can control, you can't control your thoughts, but you can calm them. You can kind of see them. The point of meditation is a time to really reconnect with your higher self when you just don't know answers and you just feel out of control and you feel like you're going to be reactive and do damage either to yourself or to others through your words, through your behaviors or whatever. So it's a time to just give yourself a, what's the word? I don't want to say it's not a punishment by all means, but you're taking a timeout. You're taking a timeout, and the timeout is also looked at as a negative thing, but it's a time where you're able to make huge rational decisions. Think of it as like a slingshot. You're pulling back and taking a moment so you can let go and shoot forward, right? So that's really just so people understand. Meditation's placement is to kind of do that, is to scale you forward, but so that you're not reactive and you can just take a moment to reconnect with you and to be rational and to have clarity on what you're going to do for that next step. So that's something I had a hard time understanding. So exercise, just like going back to yoga, because it's a very big trending thing right now. And the reason why is because the end goal is Shavasana. Shavasana is a time where you get into a space of meditation and the mind is quiet. Exercise's placement is to quiet the chaos of the mind. That's its true placement. So when you find exercises that put you into a meditative state, sometimes we have such intense emotions. We all have the same 22 emotions, but they can be so intense at times, like a child throwing a temper tantrum, like, right? Like, you're like, who is this? You know, and you see it in yourself, like your inner child, you're like, what the heck? Like, who is this? What is going on? Like, oh my gosh, right? But we all have that segment. And so exercise is that perfect placement when you're having that experience, because it moves that intenseness instead of keeping it stuck. And then we hold on, and then we blow up, right? We blow up on people. We get frustrated. We, quit projects. We make stupid mistakes or, whatever. And it's because we're not dealing with it as it comes along. So when you get on your exercise program and it becomes, people ask me like, how often should I be exercising? Every single freaking day. Because it's really to control the mind chaos, right? The chatter, the craziness, the anxiety, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it anxiety, depression. It's just intense negative emotions that don't serve you, that disconnect you, and that really block you from moving forward. So, or functioning at your best self. So the strength training helps you handle that intenseness, move it through you to get into that space of Shavasana in a moment of time, where then you can be in your rational space, the space that you recognize, the space that you love, the space that you want to operate at every single day.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I feel that that you are giving another perspective on what exercise is. It's not just going to the gym, getting some weight, and just going home and feeling good about it. Because sometimes we want the reward, right? Like, we want the immediate reward of going there, having big muscles, be able to brag with your friends, or that we're looking for this reward. And it could be an internal reward or a social reward, right? But I feel that the shift comes from what you said. It's a time for you. It's a time. It's not for anybody else.
Yeah, you touched something so important. We do, when you're focused on, and I have a course I teach on this. It's about goal setting, and it's so different because what you're describing is an extrinsic goal. An extrinsic goal is an outcome goal. It's the result of, right, XYZ. Intrinsic goals are based on, how you want to feel every single day when you're at your outcome goal. And, when you're setting goals based on extrinsic goals, you can't get them today. The physical aesthetics, the body transformation, the abs, and then this and then that, like you can't get that today. So because we're creatures of, we're beautiful, beautiful humans of instant gratification. We all are. We want it now. We wanted it yesterday, right? The frustration comes into placement. And so intrinsic goals is in aligning yourself with what do I have control over? How can I feel lean today? How can I feel calm energy today? How can I, and those are things you can control based on your behaviors, and it keeps you focused. And eventually you get to your extrinsic goals, but that might not happen for, people say 3 months. I don't care what people, it doesn't take, depending on where you're at and your symptoms, it could take a whole year. And for it to be really instilled of like sustainable results, because that's really what I focus on, is sustainability. And you have to remember the body's the symptom, not the cause. So if you're dissatisfied and unhappy with the symptom, which is the what is today with what we're sitting in our physical space, we have to look deeper into the cause. Our body has its beautiful way of communicating with us. Our cravings are a different way of communication. Our instability is a way of communication. Like, I say it's like a light system. We've got a red light, a yellow light, and a green light. If you're in that yellow light, it's your time where you can choose and have control. Because one of the things when I set goals with people, there's like, I want to feel in control. And I'm like, perfect. Let's set goals differently then, because you're never going to feel in control if you're setting things based on an outcome, right? Anything outside of yourself, that will never work. So why not try something different? So when you're in that yellow space of like dissatisfaction, unhappiness, you can go one of two ways. You can either go back in the green light or back in the red light. And unfortunately, mainstream has taught us the ways of measuring success, this scale, body fat pinching, this and that, which all creates a sense of unworthiness, not good enough, shame, guilt, anger, which keeps us more disconnected from self. So
yeah, it's like you need to win. Like trying is not enough, right? Or there is a certain scale of what you need to get, and if you don't get it, then you don't succeed, right? And I feel that related to what you were saying, that there are two important things here. I mean, one is how you handle frustration, because in the end, anything that you start that you're not good at, that you don't know, that you're learning, you need to start with a beginner's mind, right? And so if you cannot handle that frustration, it might be something that you just need to drop because it's just creating too much stress for you, right? So how would you say that good ways to, one, not be focused on the end goal, and just, you know, for example, I started yoga, and for me, the only goal was that I had to show up. Like I had to show up, you know, like it's a time for me, I'm going to show up. And there was no goal apart from just being there, right? So like how do you shift this mindset and move away from I want 25% body fat, or I want, you know, to be able to carry my mom and my grandma, you know, in my bag. Like how did you move away from that and do something that is not only sustainable but better for you as a goal?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that all goes back to the way that you're setting goals. Where is my focus? What are my intentions? And you have to, it's called a conflicted mind. So in the beginning, that's why having a support system and having a coach that you can trust, that you feel knows the truth and can teach you the truth and provide you with the tools. Because there's a lot of people that know truth and they don't know how to teach people how to have what they have. And so it's really, as I mentioned, it's the way that you're seeing things. When you change the mind, you can change the body. And what I mean by that, it's the way that you're setting goals. And those are more based on intrinsic goals. And that's getting crystal clear. And also identifying, okay, well, you know, and that's part of the goal setting workshop that I have. And we make a T-chart and we list everything that we don't like about us, because it's important to get that out of the way. We're so focused with all of our energy on, I don't like my love handles. I don't like my jiggly arms. I don't like my cellulite. I hate feeling like a failure. I hate that I feel out of control around food. I hate that. I hate. Okay, cool. Let's get the monster out of the way. Let's get all this stuff that's not serving you, that's not in alignment for you, showing up as your best self, looking as your best, feeling as your best. Let's get it all out of the way, put it all on paper, and then move over, and then it will give the person more clarity to identify what they do want. You know, and that's one of the exercises that we have in the course. And because it's a course, you know, to give a one answer thing, it's just really setting internal goals versus extrinsic goals. And because, you know, clearly, listen, I have one question I always ask people: has it worked for you? Have you been successful? I'm like, yeah, it was, but then I'm like, that's not success. If you're not sustaining it and you're not where you want to be today, you have not been successful with it. So now's the time. What you've been doing, I'm sure you've been doing it for a very long time, is not working with you. So let's try something new. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back to your old way. But you mentioned something that I want to touch on. You said, my only goal is to show up. I agree. And I think that's amazing. But I also believe that people need to add one more segment to that. It's my goal to show up and do my best. To just do my best, and my best is good enough. Not to just show up. Showing up and not being present it's not, I don't think it's like, I think if we get that mindset, it's almost like settling. Let me just show up and like half-ass it. It's like, and I'm sure you don't, but I do see people, I'm like, let me just show up, but you know, let me show up and give
there. You have to be there 100%.
Let me give my 100%, and you're 100%, because I also have to do different psychology with some of my students when they come in for their sessions. I'm like, listen, you know, they're like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm not going to be as strong. I was like, stop telling yourself these things because you haven't even tried it yet. The thing is, we exhaust ourselves before we even get there mentally. So let me show up, like you said, which is amazing. Yay. And let me give my 100%. But if you're not feeling well, your 100% is going to be good enough than the days that you were at peak performance. Maybe you have an injury today and you showing up and let me just do the best I can with what I have is going to be way more powerful. Those are the days that count the most, or the days that you don't want to go and you don't want to be there and you give your all. And then those are the most critical days, because those are the days you overcome plateaus and limiting beliefs.
Yeah, it's like this mental resistance that you have, you know, like in the end, your mind is prepared to solve problems for you, even before you have them. And so anything that looks like a problem, you're going to try to solve it even before it happens. And you know, it's a situation that you don't have under control. It's almost innate, like your body, your mind is like, let me handle this, right? But there's nothing to really handle. You just need to be there presently, just be there, right? So
and that's the power of creating habits. So when you put yourself on a routine, so you don't allow your mind to get in the way, keep it at the same time every day. I'm like I know you said at the end we're gonna be like giving homework, but I guess I'm giving it throughout the segment, this interview. So you know, put yourself in your agenda, whether it being 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you feel is, you know, almost like impossible to not show up for, but you have to keep it the same time every day. And once you do that for about 3 weeks, because it takes 21 days to create the foundation of a habit, right, or a new behavior, the way that you handle things, it becomes a little bit easier. But in the beginning, those first 3 weeks are hard because you have the confliction of the mind and you go back and forth like a ping pong. And so have that same time every single day and make it a non-negotiable. You make it non-negotiable because after this conversation, right, like you realize it's more than just the body. So
yeah, let me wrap it up and just ask you the last question, right? So I think that you touched on something that's really important, which is habits, right? So I feel that habits help you to make less decisions. And less decisions, less intervention of the mind, right? In the process, so you don't have to think about it. So why would you say that habits are powerful in regards of exercise or in any other aspect on a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, that's so many great questions. So happy about these. So let's be real. We all have an overly full life box. That's something we can all agree on. We all have an overly full life box. And when we try to add one new thing, let's say we try to add an exercise box in there. It's already overfull. Things are going good. And then something happens, we travel or family comes into town and we compromise our agenda and we're like, oh, things are already overfull. I'm getting another box to come in. So what's the last box to come in that isn't stable yet? Exercise. Let me push that out because I need more time. So that gets back out and then it kind of gets in and then goes back out and comes in. So that's kind of like the little life box analogy I like to use. And when we are developing habits don't really shift much. That's why it's hard in the beginning because it requires a lot of awareness and a lot of mental energy, not physical, because think about like brushing your teeth. We just do it. We don't think about it. Our mind is somewhere else, probably worrying about something or being what we got to do, our to-do list or whatever, or late or wherever our mind is, but we're actually engaged in the behavior of a movement of brushing our teeth, but we don't think about it. And that's why it just becomes a habit. So 40% of our day is run on habit, autopilot, where our mind can be somewhere else, but we're still taking action in segments. So habit is very, very important, especially developing the habit of exercise, because it just becomes something you do regardless of where you're at. And the benefit is it's in alignment to you keeping connected to you. We have a lot of habits that are not serving us, that work against us. And they slow us down in life, and they slow us down with our goals. They slow us down with, or prevent us from ever reaching, achieving, and sustaining our body goals or whatever goals that we have in life. Maybe people want to get more on camera, but they feel subconscious with sharing their message because they don't like the way that they look, right? And that's holding them down because they have so much great content. So building up that confidence, building up that self-esteem, building up that self-assurance, you want to get, I can explain it like this. We have our mind, we have our body, and we have our emotions, right? Of course, we have our spiritual realm, but we're not talking about that today. But we want to get all three on the same team. Exercise helps you connect with that. Developing habits that help get you on your own team are so critical for people really operating in life at peak performance. And that peak performance is constantly going to be pushed and passed, and you can surpass those thresholds. That's a point of personal growth and development. You have a threshold, and it's painful because that's the point of growing pain, right? It's not easy, like maybe changing our body's not easy. We know it's worth it, And there's segments where you do things that you don't want to do. But when you're developing habits, it doesn't matter if you want to do it or not. You're still showing up because you're showing up for yourself. And you are worth it. You know, you're so worth it. And, you know, that's something I really want people to understand is like, when you take care of yourself, you're able to show up for everything else that you do in your life. So it's so critical that you get on your own team, you know, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and you get your habits and behaviors, developing ones that are in alignment to that North Star of whatever you feel that you're, you know, aiming for in life.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's great. You know, in the end, you should go first, right? To be able to serve others better. And
it has to be a non-negotiable. It has to be.
Yeah, it has to be. Thank you, Tanya. Tanya, it's been great. It's been a real pleasure to have this interview. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and time with us. So thank you very much, and I hope to talk to you very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.